From his birth on Coruscant to his final breath on Naboo, Qui-Gon Jinn lived as a Jedi who saw what his entire order had forgotten. While the Jedi Council debated prophecies and worried about the future, this maverick master listened to the present moment, trusting his instincts over ancient texts and valuing compassion over caution. His beliefs would reshape the galaxy's destiny long after his death, and his wisdom would echo through generations of those who followed. Qui-Gon Jinn was born on the galactic capital of Coruscant around 80 BBY, and from his earliest days, the Jedi Temple recognized something different about him. In canon, particularly the novel Master and Apprentice, as a young boy, he was taken to the temple for training and assigned to the Heliost clan, where he learned the basics of lightsaber combat from the patient Jedi Master Terra Sanubi. The child who would become one of the Order's most unconventional masters spent his last night in the youngling's quarters laughing with his friends and imagining all the adventures he would have as a Padawan. He practiced with his lightsaber until Master Yaddle ordered him to bed, and at 12 years old, everything changed forever when he was assigned as Padawan to Jedi Master Dooku, one of the most skilled and respected members of the Order. Yet instead of recoiling from Dooku's stern demeanor, the young Padawan impressed his new master with remarkable self-awareness. When Dooku sensed his fear through the Force and pressed him to reveal its source, Qui-Gon confessed that he was not afraid of Dooku himself, but rather afraid of failing, of not becoming a Jedi, and of not being worthy of the path he had chosen. Dooku smiled at his honesty, calling it wiser than most knights ever achieved. This moment of openness marked the beginning of a relationship that would shape both their destinies in ways neither could have predicted. His training under Dooku would forge him into a Jedi unlike any other. But what set Qui-Gon apart from every other Jedi was a philosophy he developed over years of experience, one that the Council would call Maverick, and that history would prove to be the key to immortality itself. This and all following information are drawn from official Star Wars legends and canon sources. We highly recommend exploring these stories. Chapter 1: Love and Restraint. Love found Qui-Gon on the planet Felucia, testing everything he believed about the Jedi Code. As revealed in the novel Master and Apprentice, long before he became a master, the young Jedi went through trials on this Outer Rim world, where he fell in love with someone whose identity canon sources have not revealed. The relationship was romantic and physical, directly challenging the Jedi Code. In the end, Qui-Gon stayed loyal to the Jedi Order, though he kept a Mustafar fire diamond given to him on Felucia as a reminder of what he had lost. Unlike many Jedi who treated love as a path to darkness, Qui-Gon came to believe that attachment, when guided by compassion rather than possession, could coexist with the light side of the Force. Legends material expands this story through the character of Tal, a fellow Jedi Master who was blind but perceived the world through the Force with remarkable clarity. Their relationship was deep and meaningful, developed over years of friendship and shared missions across the galaxy, and her eventual death tested Qui-Gon severely, with his grief nearly leading him toward darkness and the desire for revenge. His restraint proves something important, as choice, not pain, defines a Jedi. He did not let his loss turn him toward vengeance, but instead channeled his understanding of love and attachment into wisdom that would serve him well when he encountered a young slave boy on a desert planet who would one day reshape galactic history. Yet even as he gained this wisdom, the shadow of his former master loomed over everything Qui-Gon had become. Chapter 2: Dooku's Shadow. When Dooku once choked a corrupt senator with the Force, Qui-Gon never forgot it. The relationship between Qui-Gon and Dooku was complicated from the beginning, built on discipline without warmth. According to the audio drama Dooku Jedi Lost, Qui-Gon survived that demanding training, but he learned its cost over time, and these lessons shaped how he would later train his own apprentice with more patience and understanding than he himself had received from Dooku. During one early mission, the young Padawan and his master were sent to rescue the son of Republic Senator Dagonet, who had been kidnapped by residents of the senator's own homeworld. Their investigation revealed a disturbing truth about how Senator Dagonet was allowing his people to starve for his own personal greed and corruption, and the kidnappers had taken his son to protest these cruel policies rather than for any ransom. When Dagonet arrived with his forces to retrieve his son, a firefight erupted between the senator's guards and the Jedi-backed kidnappers, who had only wanted their suffering to be heard. During a pause in this fighting, Dagonet threatened to burn down the entire village and many others as an example to anyone who might defy him in the future. And an enraged Dooku began force-choking the corrupt senator with clear intent to end his life, showing a side of himself that Qui-Gon had never seen before. But Qui-Gon calmed the situation with a single act that proved his wisdom surpassed his master's. He quickly released Dagonet's son, managing to defuse the entire confrontation without any further violence. In the aftermath, Dooku commended his apprentice's actions and praised him as a wiser man than himself, though the image of his master using the Force to harm rather than protect stayed with Qui-Gon for years afterward. This was not the first time Dooku's methods had troubled him deeply. On an earlier mission, Master and apprentice had joined a strike team to track the notorious feline bounty hunter Shenda Maul across the galaxy. When they eventually found her at her hideout on Numidian Prime, Maul captured Qui-Gon, and before she could harm him, Dooku struck her down with Force Lightning, a dark side technique that saved the young Padawan's life, but caused him considerable concern about his master's true nature. At some point, Dooku and Qui-Gon attended the annual Coruscant Dragonfire Air Rally at the invitation of Council member Jor Aerith, where the young Padawan was shocked to meet Dooku's brother Ramil. When Ramil's airspeeder was sabotaged and crashed during the event, Master and apprentice investigated and discovered that the official investigator was trying to cover up the incident while working for a Genet crime boss named Senevax. Most troubling of all, they learned that Senevax had a spy on the Jedi Council itself, and after escorting Senevax to the Council chamber, they discovered that Jedi Master Braylon was the spy, having been blackmailed because her secret son, Arath Terex, had been selling her influence to criminals for years. Then, Dooku left the Order in 42 BBY, and no one understood why. Despite the troubling incidents with his former master, Qui-Gon had stayed loyal to Dooku and spoke highly of him to others when possible, maintaining contact even after taking on Kenobi as his own Padawan. Then came the shock that rocked the Jedi's world following an incident on Dooku's homeworld of Sereno involving his family and their legacy, leaving Qui-Gon feeling lost and confused as he struggled to understand his former master's unexpected choice. Qui-Gon trusted in the Jedi teachings and himself, which allowed him to recover and replace his shaken feelings with resolve, though the wound of Dooku's departure never fully healed. What he did not know was that Dooku had secretly become an apprentice to the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, and the man who had once praised Qui-Gon's wisdom was walking a path of darkness that would eventually lead to galactic conflict and destruction on a scale not seen in 1,000 years. Years later, after Qui-Gon's death, Dooku would hold Obi-Wan Kenobi prisoner on Geonosis and claim that Qui-Gon would have joined his cause, arguing that Qui-Gon had been dissatisfied with the Council and would have seen the Republic's corruption as Dooku had. Kenobi firmly rejected this idea, declaring that his master would never join him under any circumstances, no matter what flaws he saw in the system. Both men saw flaws in the Jedi system and disagreed with the Council on many matters, but their responses could not have been more different, as Dooku broke away in anger and embraced the dark side, while Qui-Gon stayed and tried to heal the Order from within. With Dooku gone, Qui-Gon channeled everything he had learned into training his own apprentice, determined to pass on a different legacy. Chapter 3: The Living Force. That philosophy would take decades to fully form, built through experiences that tested everything the young Padawan learned from Dooku. While most Jedi focused on the cosmic force and its grand design for the universe, Qui-Gon trusted something different entirely, believing in the living force, the energy that flowed through all life in the present moment. He did not try to command the force or use it as a tool for his own purposes, but instead listened to it carefully and let it guide his actions naturally, trusting that the force would reveal the path when he was ready to see it. This belief shaped everything about him. Where other Jedi trusted rules and prophecy charts, the Maverick Master trusted moments, instincts, and living beings instead. He did not turn toward the light because he expected to win some cosmic game, but simply because it was the light. His philosophy would eventually unlock a secret the Jedi had long forgotten. However, the Jedi Council called him a maverick and watched his defiance with growing concern. They viewed him as someone who would disobey the Jedi Code if he felt it was the right decision. On one occasion, Obi-Wan Kenobi watched in silence as his master told the Council directly that he disagreed with them, standing firm despite their clear disapproval. The older Jedi did not reject the code itself, but rather rejected using it as an excuse to avoid hard choices. Where the Council valued stability and caution, Qui-Gon valued truth and responsibility to the living beings around him. Despite his disagreements with the Council, Qui-Gon remained a respected and powerful Jedi, regarded by his fellows as a great master. He utilized telekinesis and mind tricks on more than one occasion, using them to further his goals during missions. A testament to his power in the Force was when, during a mission on planet WG-4587, he managed to lift an entire CR-70 Corvette through telekinesis, demonstrating abilities far beyond those of most Jedi. His Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi, whom he had taken on in 44 BBY, was an eager apprentice who was more than willing to obey the orders of the Jedi Council than his master often was. Kenobi believed that his teacher could have been a member of the Jedi High Council if he simply followed the rules more closely and showed more respect for tradition. Though what Kenobi knew, as few others did, was that his master had actually been offered a seat on the council and rejected it outright. Instead of lectures, Qui-Gon taught through experience and let the Force be the true teacher. On one occasion, Qui-Gon took Kenobi to a plain and overlooked its native creatures, showing the young Padawan how the Force existed in all life that surrounded them, from the smallest insect to the largest beast. During another training session, the two sparred together, with the older Jedi complimenting Kenobi's growing skill with a lightsaber while also pushing him to improve. Qui-Gon taught his Padawan as best he could, although Kenobi did not always agree with his teaching methods or understand his reasonings, which sometimes led to tension between them. Despite the younger Jedi's clear skill with a lightsaber, his master held him to practicing only basic techniques, which hurt Kenobi's confidence and strained their relationship significantly. What Kenobi did not understand was that Qui-Gon did this purposely, wanting to give his apprentice time to develop his own distinct style out of complete mastery of the fundamentals, rather than rushing ahead before he was ready. At some point, Kenobi came up with an idea for a new weapon, consisting of two short-bladed sabers attached to a thin chain, and after hearing this idea, his master taught him an important lesson about how lightsabers were about how the Jedi wished to be seen by the galaxy, not displays of power or intimidation, but symbols of peace and justice. Then, Trandoshan hunters attacked the village without warning, seeking Wookiee captives. Around 41 BBY, Qui-Gon had taken Kenobi to Kashyyyk to visit his old friend Brennan, a Wookiee who had saved his life twice during previous adventures, during the celebration of Life Day. The lesson about patience was interrupted when the hunters launched nets from the trees to kidnap Wookiees for the slave trade. Master and apprentice fought against the attackers and defeated many of them in fierce combat, though Qui-Gon himself was eventually captured when he demanded the hunters surrender rather than continuing to fight. As he was taken away, the Jedi Master told Kenobi it was up to him to rescue the Wookiees. Kenobi later arrived at the Trandoshan camp, pretending to surrender before freeing his master with the Force. and together with arriving Wookiee reinforcements, they defeated the slavers and freed all the prisoners. But Mandalore became a year-long nightmare that tested both master and apprentice to their limits. Over the span of a year, the civil conflict raged on the planet, pitting martial traditionalists against reformists. The leader of the new Mandalorian movement, Duchess Satine Kryze, became a target for the traditionalists, who hired bounty hunters to end her life and silence her calls for peace and an end to Mandalore's warrior traditions. Qui-Gon and Kenobi were sent on an extended mission to protect her from these threats, spending an entire year on Mandalore, constantly on the run from those who wished her harm and never knowing where they would sleep or when the next attack would come. During this mission, Kenobi developed romantic feelings for the Duchess, and Qui-Gon became aware of the unlikely romance between his apprentice and the noblewoman they were sworn to protect. The Jedi Master did not condemn it or report it to the Council, because his own experiences with love had taught him that attachment was not inherently dangerous, and that fear of loss, not love itself, led to the dark side. Eventually, the conflict ended with the new Mandalorians coming to power and Kryze becoming Mandalore's ruler, bringing peace to the war-torn world at last. Later, another mission would test Qui-Gon's beliefs about violence and peace when he traveled to the planet Bryn. As depicted in the Age of Republic Qui-Gon Jinn comic, Qui-Gon and Kenobi were sent to establish negotiations between the priestess There of Wood and the Metal Clan, who opposed her. While Kenobi stayed in their shuttle, Qui-Gon met with the priestesses' rivals, only for the Metal Clan to attempt to kill both him and There as justification for cutting down the world's sacred trees. Deflecting blaster bolts with his lightsaber, he used the Force to leap aboard their shuttle and escape with the priestess. However, There was disgusted by Coruscant when they arrived, viewing it as a city of metal, and she demanded that Qui-Gon return and cut down every member of the Metal Clan. When he explained that violence was not the Jedi way, she called him a coward who did not live up to the legends of the Jedi as great warriors. The accusation disturbed him deeply, though not for the reason she intended. Being called a coward did not bother him, but being called a great warrior did. He returned to the Jedi Temple, troubled, leading Grand Master Yoda to confront him about the internal turmoil he sensed. Their discussion led Qui-Gon to seek answers on a world full of life where he could commune deeply with the Force. The Force guided him to a charted but unnamed world where darkness was spreading across the land. Trusting the Force to show him answers, the Jedi Master found a dark temple and sat upon its throne, entering a terrifying Force vision. In the vision, his skin and robes were covered in dark marks, and he was surrounded by red humanoid beings that grew from shadowy tendrils. When they attacked, he ignited his lightsaber and cut them down, only to watch the red coloring vanish from their bodies. He had slain Jedi, and the same darkness that had marked them began to consume him as well. By choosing violence, the dark side had gained power over him. When he awoke from the vision in horror, light had entered the monument, and he realized the Force had taught him something essential. Balance could be achieved without conflict, because unchecked violence would make the Jedi become what they sought to destroy. Some of the planet's dark corruption had transformed into flowers, existing in harmony with the light. Returning to Coruscant with a new understanding, he found There in one of the city's parks and offered to help her find off-world allies to oppose the Metal Clan. Using his new lessons, he taught her that she would need to find balance with those potential allies rather than seeking their submission. Then, the Council offered Qui-Gon a seat among them, and everyone expected him to accept. During another mission to Pijal, an unexpected invitation came when Master Poli de Patience stepped down from his position on the Jedi Council. Qui-Gon was shocked to be asked, despite his many disagreements with them over the years, and while he was initially pleased by the honor, he thought of his Padawan, knowing that if he accepted, Kenobi would have to be passed to a new master before completing his training. On Pijal, Qui-Gon reunited with his old friend Rael Averross, who now served Crown Princess Fanry as an advisor to the royal court. A performance troupe called the Opposition was supposedly making violent attacks to protest a treaty that would end Pijal's absolute monarchy. But as the Jedi Master investigated the situation more deeply, he discovered that the Opposition was being framed, and their protests had actually been peaceful all along. Qui-Gon received a vision of the treaty signing turning into a bloody battle, and he learned that the treaty would give heavy influence to the Zerka Corporation, a company known for its exploitation of workers across the galaxy. The truth eventually emerged that Princess Fanry herself had been deceiving everyone by secretly building a military force called the Blackguards and framing the opposition for violence she had orchestrated. With Kenobi's help, along with two jewel thieves named Pax Marifer and Rahara Wick, Qui-Gon succeeded in rescuing the slaves aboard Zerka ships from certain death, and after the mission, he made his final choice and declined the offer to join the Jedi Council. Years later, Qui-Gon had joined Jedi Masters Mace Windu, Plo Koon, and Depa Billaba on a mission to the planet Usulon. Sent by Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum to stop a warlord named Guataco, who was backed by the Hutt clan and had captured children to serve as soldiers. The planet had around 80,000 kilometers worth of tunnels, making it impossible for the Jedi to find the warlord's base through normal means. They devised a plan where Windu would purposely allow himself to be captured, then send a signal through the Force to lead his fellow Jedi to Guataco's location. Although Qui-Gon and his fellow Jedi were unable to reach Windu in time to help him, the Jedi Master had already defeated the army on his own, and Guataco himself was shot by one of the children he had kidnapped. The mission demonstrated the lengths Qui-Gon would go to protect the innocent and showed his willingness to work alongside the Council when the cause was just. Then, a crisis on Naboo would lead Qui-Gon to the discovery that would define his legacy. Chapter 4: Finding the Chosen One. But the Trade Federation tried to kill them within minutes of their arrival on the command ship. As seen in Star Wars Episode I: The Phantom Menace, the blockade of Naboo in 32 BBY was secretly controlled by the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, who was manipulating events from the shadows for his own sinister purposes. Chancellor Finis Valorum dispatched Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Kenobi to resolve the crisis through diplomacy, hoping they could negotiate a peaceful settlement between the Trade Federation and the people of Naboo. From the moment they arrived on the Trade Federation command ship, Qui-Gon sensed something was wrong, noting an unusual amount of fear for something as trivial as a trade dispute. His instincts proved correct, as the Trade Federation's leaders, influenced by Sidious, flooded the room with poison gas. The two Jedi held their breath long enough for the Federation to open the doors, then fought their way through battle droids to escape. They stowed away aboard separate landing craft heading to the planet's surface and made their way to the capital city of Theed. Along the way, Qui-Gon encountered a Gungan named Jar Jar Binks, who was nearly crushed by a Federation troop carrier while fleeing through the forests, and the Jedi saved him, earning a life debt from the grateful Gungan. After traveling through Naboo's planet core with Binks as their guide, they reached Theed and rescued Queen Padme Amidala from Federation custody. Together with her guards and handmaidens, they escaped the planet on the Queen's starship, but damage from the Federation blockade forced them to land on the Outer Rim desert world of Tatooine to repair their damaged hyperdrive, setting the stage for a fateful meeting. Then, a slave boy changed everything Qui-Gon thought he knew about the Force. The Jedi Master ventured into Mos Espa with Amidala, who was disguised as a handmaiden, and their Gungan companion Jar Jar Binks. They found a junk shop owned by a Toydarian named Watto, who had the parts they needed to repair the hyperdrive. But Watto would not accept Republic credits because they were worthless in the Outer Rim territories, and Jedi mind tricks did not work on his species due to his Toydarian physiology. It was there, in that dusty shop at the edge of nowhere, that Qui-Gon first met Anakin Skywalker, a 9-year-old slave who worked for Watto, repairing broken machines and droids with a skill far beyond his years. The boy followed the Jedi and the others through the streets and warned them about an approaching sandstorm, and when it became clear they could not make it back to their ship in time, Anakin offered them shelter in his home. There, Qui-Gon met the boy's mother, Shmi, who was also one of Watto's slaves, and during dinner, Anakin deduced that the visitor was a Jedi after spotting his lightsaber, speaking excitedly about his dreams of becoming a pilot. Anakin had built a pod racer in secret and wanted to compete in the Boonta Eve Classic, and when Qui-Gon mentioned their need for parts, the boy volunteered to race. In watching Anakin work on his pod, Qui-Gon told Shmi that he could sense a Jedi's potential in her son, and when he asked who Anakin's father was, her answer stunned him. As she explained, there was no father, and she had conceived Anakin without any biological explanation whatsoever. Then, the blood test revealed something impossible that changed everything Qui-Gon believed. Later that night, Qui-Gon tested the boy's blood and sent a sample to Kenobi on the ship for analysis. The results were beyond anything he had expected or could have imagined, as Anakin's midichlorian count was over 20,000, higher than any known Jedi in galactic history, including Grandmaster Yoda himself, who had trained Jedi for 800 years. Through the supposed virgin birth and the incredible midichlorian count, Qui-Gon came to believe that Anakin was the chosen one of Jedi prophecy, the one destined to bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith forever. The Jedi Master did not see Anakin as a prophecy first because he saw a frightened child shaped by slavery and loss who desperately needed someone to believe in him. Where others might have only seen raw potential or a dangerous weapon, Qui-Gon saw a boy who needed guidance. He approached Watto with a new wager, where if Anakin won the race, Watto would free the boy and his mother from bondage. The Toydarian refused to free both slaves, but agreed to release one, throwing a small colored cube to decide which one would be freed. Using the Force, Qui-Gon ensured it landed on blue, which meant Anakin's freedom was at stake. The race was dangerous and intense, with Anakin facing sabotage and the ruthless tactics of Sebulba, but against all odds, the boy emerged victorious. But Darth Maul attacked from the desert dunes before they could reach the ship. As they headed toward the ship, the Sith assassin who had tracked them across Tatooine finally struck. The two fought across the sand while Anakin rushed to get help, and the ship arrived just in time for Qui-Gon to escape from the Dark Warrior. The brief duel convinced the Jedi Master of something terrible, as the Sith had returned after 1,000 years of silence, and this warrior was clearly trained in the dark side arts. On Coruscant, Qui-Gon brought Anakin before the Jedi High Council and told the Masters about his encounter with Darth Maul, believing the attacker to be a Sith Lord based on his fighting style and the darkness that surrounded him. The Council was doubtful, believing the Jedi had destroyed the Sith a millennium earlier, but they committed themselves to learning the Dark Warrior's identity. The Maverick Jedi also revealed that he believed Anakin to be the chosen one and asked that the boy be trained as a Jedi. The Council tested Anakin and agreed that he was mighty with the Force, but they refused to accept him for training, believing he was too old to begin the rigorous training that shaped Jedi from infancy, and that he was dangerously full of fear and anger despite his incredible power. The Council saw risk, where Qui-Gon saw responsibility, and he would not accept their decision, announcing that he would take the boy as his Padawan learner, even if it meant Kenobi had to face his trials early. The Council delayed the discussion, ordering both Jedi to return to Naboo with Queen Amidala to deal with the ongoing crisis and promising to revisit the matter of Anakin's training later. What awaited them there would test everything Qui-Gon believed and decide the fate of the Chosen One forever. Chapter 5: Duel of the Fates. Meanwhile, the Gungans agreed to fight alongside their former enemies against the Federation. Upon arrival on Naboo, the Jedi traveled with Amidala to find them hiding in a sacred area of the forests. There, the two people formed an alliance against the Trade Federation, and the Queen's handmaiden Padme revealed herself to be the true Amidala, having masqueraded as a servant while one of her handmaidens portrayed the Queen as a safety precaution. However, Qui-Gon had not been fooled by her disguise from the moment they met, but he had kept her secret to protect her life throughout their journey. The plan was set, with the Gungan army fighting the Federation forces as a diversion away from the capital city of Theed, while Amidala, her forces, and the Jedi infiltrated the city to capture the Trade Federation's leaders. Qui-Gon made it clear that while he would protect the Queen, he could not fight a conflict for her people, as that was a choice they had to make for themselves. Once inside the palace hangar, they were confronted by Darth Maul, who stood waiting with his double-bladed lightsaber igniting with a crimson glow that cast shadows across the hangar floor. The Sith had been hunting them since Tatooine, and now he would finish what he had started in the desert. This duel was never simply about Qui-Gon versus Maul, as many have observed, but about who would raise Anakin Skywalker and shape the galaxy's future for generations to come, making it one of the most significant confrontations in galactic history. Then, Maul separated Master and Apprentice with a single strike, trapping Kenobi behind energy shields. In the film's climactic sequence, they had fought him together through the hangar and into the palace generator complex in a fierce battle. The Sith dominated the duel with his aggressive form, though both Jedi managed to keep pace as Maul led them through the narrow corridors. Eventually, he knocked Kenobi down several levels, then trapped him behind energy shielding that cycled on and off in regular intervals. The Master and Apprentice were cut off from each other with no way to reunite. While trapped behind the shield, Qui-Gon dropped to one knee and meditated. Even with a Sith Lord pacing before him, the Jedi Master centered himself in the Force. The shields lowered, and Qui-Gon rose and engaged Maul again in a deadly dance of light and shadow. The two combatants were evenly matched as they moved through the narrow corridors of the melting pit until Maul struck with the hilt of his weapon, catching the Jedi Master off balance. In that single moment, the Sith seized his opportunity and drove his blade through Qui-Gon's chest. But Kenobi watched his master fall, and grief became rage in his heart. He waited in horror behind the energy shields, and when they finally lowered, he rushed forward with grief-fueled intensity. The Sith disarmed him and kicked his lightsaber into the deep reactor shaft, then knocked him partly down as well. But Kenobi summoned his master's fallen lightsaber through the Force, leaped from the pit with all his strength, and cut Maul in two with a single devastating strike that ended the duel. The Sith Lord tumbled into the depths below, defeated but not destroyed. It was too late to save Qui-Gon, as no amount of Bacta could heal his mortal wound, and Kenobi ran to his dying master and cradled him in his arms, tears streaming down his face as he held the man who had taught him everything he knew. With his last breath, Qui-Gon made his apprentice promise to train Anakin as a Jedi, insisting that the boy was the chosen one who would bring balance to the Force, and Kenobi swore that he would honor his master's dying wish. Then, Qui-Gon Jinn became one with the Force forever, leaving behind a legacy that would outlast the Order itself. The galaxy lost more than a warrior that day, as it lost its interpreter of the Force and its last advocate for balance through understanding rather than rigid adherence to rules. What followed for Anakin would be rigid training, emotional distance, and fear of attachment, as he would be raised by the Order's rules rather than Qui-Gon's wisdom. Qui-Gon was given a funeral on Naboo, where his body was cremated on a pyre as the flames reached toward the night sky, and many delegates attended the ceremony to honor his sacrifice. But Qui-Gon Jinn's story did not end with his final breath, for he had learned secrets that would allow him to guide the living from beyond the grave. Chapter 6: Beyond Death. However, death could not silence Qui-Gon Jinn, for he had learned a secret the Jedi had forgotten. Before his death, the Maverick Master had begun training with ethereal beings known as the Force Priestesses, who taught him the ancient secret of preserving consciousness after death that had been lost to the Jedi for thousands of years. He traveled to a planet strong with the Force, a world that legends said was the birthplace of life and the origin of midichlorians. He learned that when a living thing died, its life passed through the living force and into the cosmic force to become one with the Force. As the living force and cosmic force existed in tandem, it became possible for one to retain consciousness and physically manifest themselves after death. He also learned from a shaman of the wills that achieving eternal consciousness required absolute selflessness. His training was incomplete when Maul struck him down, which meant that he could not physically appear as a spirit to the living, but only could speak as a disembodied voice in the Force. The first sign of Qui-Gon's continued existence came approximately 10 years after his death, when Anakin, consumed by grief over his mother's death, struck down a Tusken camp in rage. Through the Force, Qui-Gon called out to him, but Anakin refused to heed the warning, telling himself he was only imagining the voice. Shortly after, Anakin visited Qui-Gon's shrine on Naboo before his secret wedding to Padme Amidala. While at the shrine, Anakin attempted to reach out through the Force to connect with Qui-Gon. The attempt seemingly yielded nothing in his senses, which he interpreted as Qui-Gon's way of telling him that things could always be made right. After feeling a sudden sense of calm despite the brewing Clone Wars, he expressed his thanks, despite not knowing if Qui-Gon was responsible for his personal interpretations. During the Clone Wars, the one who had struck down Qui-Gon returned. Darth Maul had survived being cut in two by Kenobi, replacing his lower body with a cybernetic apparatus. The Sith sought revenge on Kenobi for maiming him, and the two fought on several occasions. During one duel, Maul taunted Kenobi with memories of his master's death, making the Jedi briefly give in to anger to strike against his mentor's slayer. During the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon appeared in a vision to Kenobi, Anakin, and Ahsoka Tano on the mysterious planet Mortis, where the Force was strong enough for him to manifest visually, despite his incomplete training. He warned them that powerful beings on this world sought Anakin for his potential as the Chosen One. It was not until the final days of the Clone Wars that Qui-Gon revealed himself fully to Yoda, knowing that the Grand Master was destined to play a significant role in restoring balance to the Force. As shown in the Clone Wars episodes Voices, Destiny, and Sacrifice, the dead Jedi spoke to Yoda through the Force and announced himself as part of the living Force, stunning the ancient master. He guided Yoda to the swamp planet Dagobah, the first step on a series of trials that would test the Grand Master as he had never been tested before. The living Force guided Yoda in the form of glowing fireflies, leading him through the dark swamps to the Force Priestesses who guarded the secrets of immortality that Qui-Gon had begun to learn before his death on Naboo. Yoda completed the trials and was deemed worthy of learning the secret of eternal consciousness, with the ancient beings instructing that Qui-Gon would guide his training. After the fall of the Jedi Order and the rise of the Empire, Yoda went into exile on Dagobah to await the time when a new hope would emerge from the darkness. Before departing Coruscant for the last time, he told Kenobi that Qui-Gon had returned from the netherworld of the Force and could teach him the secret as well, offering his former apprentice a chance to transcend death itself and continue guiding the galaxy from beyond the grave. For years, Kenobi could only hear Qui-Gon as a voice in his head while living in exile on Tatooine, watching over the young Luke Skywalker from a distance as the boy grew up on his uncle's moisture farm without knowing his true heritage. Qui-Gon's voice provided comfort until the Maverick Master finally completed his own training and learned to appear physically as a spirit, giving Kenobi company at last. When called upon during Kenobi's exile, Qui-Gon did not see his former apprentice only as the old man he had become, but saw every aspect of the man's past and present at once, including the young Padawan who had doubted himself on their earliest missions, the knight who had lost everything on Mustafar, and the hermit who still carried the light despite all he had suffered. He was in awe of Kenobi's steadfast devotion to the light side of the Force, amazed that he had remained a Jedi despite losing everyone he loved to darkness and destruction. Though Qui-Gon blamed himself for placing the burden of training Anakin on Kenobi before he was ready, Kenobi did not share that blame. Anakin fell to the dark side and became Darth Vader, Kenobi argued that Anakin had all the wisdom needed to choose the light and simply chose otherwise of his own free will, refusing to let his master carry guilt for another's choices. Qui-Gon passed his teachings on to both Yoda and Kenobi, and they used what they learned to help guide Luke Skywalker toward his destiny as the galaxy's new hope for redemption. When Luke finally brought Anakin back from darkness in the throne room of the second battle station, the prophecy was fulfilled at last, as balance came to the Force not through domination or destruction, but through understanding, compassion, and the love of a son for his father. Qui-Gon's philosophy survived when the Jedi Order did not, carried forward by those he had touched. The people of Naboo built a shrine to Qui-Gon's memory, honoring him as a hero who had given everything to save them from the Trade Federation's occupation. Though few on the planet had met the Jedi Master personally, everyone knew his name and the sacrifice he made in the Palace Generator Complex fighting the Sith. For years after the invasion, people lit candles during the yearly memorial for all who had given their lives for Naboo. His teachings passed down through generations of Force users, from Qui-Gon Jinn to Obi-Wan, from Obi-Wan to Anakin, from Anakin to Ahsoka Tano, and from Obi-Wan and Yoda to Luke Skywalker. Qui-Gon Jinn's body burned on a funeral pyre on Naboo, but his spirit endured in the Force he had trusted all his life, continuing to guide those who would listen, even after death claimed his physical form forever. To truly understand how Qui-Gon became the Jedi he was, you must learn the story of his master, whose rise to power and eventual fall from light reshaped the entire galaxy. Watch his full story next.